Welcome to Fit After 40, the Women's Fitness and Health Revolution podcast. Kinsey here, certified personal trainer and menopause coaching specialist. I've worked with hundreds of clients over the past 12 years and know firsthand how intimidating starting a fitness routine can be, especially in perimenopause. My goal is to teach women in midlife and beyond how to feel strong and confident in their bodies and to help them live the healthy life they deserve, free of pain, heart disease, dementia, frailty, you name it. In this show, you'll get action steps you can take today, backed by the most up-to-date research and thousands of hours of practical in-gym experience. The best time to get started may have been 20 years ago, but the second best time to get started is today. Hello, and welcome to Fit After 40 Women's Fitness and Health Revolution podcast. Kinsey here, and I am coming to you from a straight up fall day. Last week it was in, I kid you not, the 90s, definitely high 80s, like 1 or 2 90s over here in the Twin Cities, which, am I wrong? I feel like it's unheard of, but I don't know. I just can't keep track of what is life anymore. Point is, we are now officially like almost a full week into October. So I'm going to just call it that's unacceptable. We got to get these fall vibes and the universe heard. And here we are with beautiful fall weather just in time for Margarita Definition and I to leave. Not forever, of course, because we've got the Fit After 40 small group personal training starting in November. Hello, shout out to the in-person cohorts. So definitely keep the eye out for that because those spots are limited, only 6 spaces a piece. So if it is something you're interested in, you know I'll talk a lot about it. We already have some of them starting to, the spots get snapped up as I do these workshops. So hop on that commitment-free waitlist, even if you're interested, but like 10%. That way you just don't miss it. You get a lot of good info in the meantime. You get good emails that teach you things. We talked all last week about the top 5 best exercises to get started with for lower body for women back or freshly back to fitness, which brings me into our topic of today. But first, let's just wrap up Fit After 40 small group personal training in November, coming up in it's going to be here in no time. So get on that commitment-free wait list. No harm, no foul. In the meantime, even if you don't sign up, you get lots of good information along the way. So that's pretty dope. You also get exclusive waitlist discounts. So I don't know. I feel like it's a win-win-win-win. So yeah, we're about to take off, hit the road for our wedding. I just don't even know how we've gotten here so fast. I feel like I say that every week and it stays true. Am I done planning it is what people have been asking. And my answer is no. I mean, I'm done planning it, but are the pieces all there? They're getting there. You know what? Nothing's perfect in life, right? I'll tell you what, though, it's going to be so fun. And that's all that matters. We got bubbles. We got food. We got dancing. We got people we love. It's going to be a great time. All right, team. So anywho, dilly, that's kind of the update. It all started because I was talking about how lovely and fall it was here. And yeah, this is hands down my favorite season. When I lived in LA, I was really between fall and spring, which is funny to have a favorite season in LA because it all the same, except for like some seasons are really hot and then some seasons have fire. And now like it all kind of blends into one. And every once in a while you get like a little bit of rain. So I ended up thinking fall was my favorite. And now that I live in a state with seasons, that is confirmed. I love fall. I love the smells. I love the cool air. I love the vibes. I love apple orchards and pumpkins and even the occasional spooky movie, which was never my preference, but somehow I've collected only humans who love scary movies. So that's where we're at. This year, Margarita's been doing a really nice job of letting me watch more witch movies, which I can really get behind. So we watched The Craft and Practical Magic for the first time ever. Neither of us have had seen those, which feels like a big old party foul given that, I mean, he's younger than me, but still like as a kiddo in the early aughts, I feel like I would have just been obsessed with these movies, and now I am retroactively. Okay, I feel like I've talked about fall enough. The problem is that I could talk about fall forever. So today we are continuing on with our listicles. I'm pretty sure is what they're called if they're articles. I don't know what they're called if they're podcast. Listicasts, anyway, pod lists. That's kind of cute. We're on week 2 of our pod list. We have 3 of these pod lists. So we did best lower body exercises, my top 5 favorite for beginners or folks newly back. Today we are talking about my top 5 upper body exercises for beginners or people freshly back. And this was a fun one. Upper body is a doozy. I mean, it's all beginning a workout routine, beginning the journey of fitness, I should say, is really an exciting endeavor. Because we have, just like any new thing, there's just so much to learn. So really choosing the stepping stones to a strong foundation make all the difference. And especially when so many, especially back exercises, I feel like require more of a hinge activation. You see that little deadlift where the hips go back. You've got that nice long and engaged spine. So you're doing those bent over rows, tricep kickbacks, all these things. I feel like we see a lot of hinging, and that's not. We talked about this last week a little bit, and we've talked about it before. Hinging is a movement pattern that takes time to train. So for me, I tend not to incorporate things like bent over rows until my folks have nailed the hinge. Because if we're not holding the basic fundamental pattern, if we can't hold a hinge without rounding our spine or not feeling it in our low back, then throwing another move on top of that sort of just feels like a hat on a hat of disaster. And I see it all the time. I mean, this is why we talk about it all the time on this podcast. I think that the small group personal training approach that Fit After 40 is taking is going to be the future of what we see a lot of gyms become going like in the next 5 to 10 years. Because even just coaching in group fitness, which I love, I love it. That's why we're keeping it with a group. When I see people coming in even people who have been doing it for years, that hinge pattern is such a doozy. And if you do not have time to train it or dial it in, there's just so many ways that adding a row on top of it goes south. And even if they're not getting injured, they're wasting their time. They're training improper movement patterns. So if you're rounding your spine, every time you're rounding your spine, you're training your muscles to round the spine, right? Because every time we hold our skeleton in different positions, we're essentially developing that brain-body connection that is going to teach them to continue to hold the skeleton in those positions. That's why we see so many movement imbalances, right? If we're sitting at work, the front of our thighs, those hip flexors are held in shortened positions, so they get really tight. Our butt and our hamstrings are held in lengthened positions, so they're underactive. It's just the whole thing. So the point is, this pertained to last week to more of the booty exercises. You didn't see any deadlifts. We didn't, not any deadlifts yet. No good mornings. We saw a glute bridge, right? To start turning that brain-body connection on with the brain and the tush. So today, picking the back side exercise, the posterior chain, the rows, was the part that I had a little fun with. And the great news is I've been training people new to fitness for a long time. It is my favorite population to work with because, like I said, you really are embarking on this great new adventure. And if you learn how to do this all at the top to move your body correctly, you are going to be in such a better place in a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, than most people who have been doing this for a long time. Because a lot of these movement imbalances I see, especially in group fitness settings, and honestly, like every gym setting, I see in people who have been working out for a long time. So I love having the honor of training a body in the first stages of movement because you really get to set the tone for being to move well for as long as you want to lift. And that changes everything. Okay, so Enough chit chat, Kinsey. Can you tell I had espresso before this? Let's break it down. So, what on earth? We're starting with my 5 is my number 5 for upper body moves. Last week, I threw in a single leg balance for my lower body, and I think that was a little confusing at first until I explained it, I hope. This one is sort of the same way. So, my very first choice is a high plank. And hear me out. When it's done correctly, a plank really is a total body movement. You should be bracing both sides of your body. Sure, your anterior side is working a little bit harder because you're fighting gravity in that direction, but all of your body should be active. There's about 1.5 million ways that I see planks done wrong, and they are, again, when I walk around a gym, when I step into a group fitness class, one of the most common movement patterns that I see done incorrectly. So one, getting a plank early on is a great way to train a very foundational movement pattern. Now, a plank at the beginning of your fitness journey looks different than a plank at the midway point, a couple years down the road, a couple decades down the road. We're building the foundation. So the plank that we're looking at is an elevated plank. This could be a plank against the wall where we're literally just training the shoulder to wrist alignment. We're teaching you to slide the shoulders down the back, to brace through the core, engaging through that belly button, drawing towards the spine, glutes engaging, flexing through the feet, building the foundation of that. And eventually, as we start to build stability in the shoulder joints, as we train the lats down our back, as we start to turn on all the muscles that should be firing while we're in a plank, then because we've built that neuromuscular control, that brain to body connection, we can take the surface down. So maybe we go from a wall to a high box or to a barbell that's set out across a rack. And then eventually we take it down to a lower box, maybe a chair, and eventually we bring it down to the floor. It seems like a lot of work to build up to a plank, right? Yeah, it does. Because like I said, there's a lot of different places that planks can go wrong. Pretty much up the entire kinetic chain. I'm also a big fan of once the plank gets down to the floor, bringing it to the knees at first to, again, just make sure that that alignment is really locked in and that all of our muscles are firing. So why is this an upper body move? Like I said, we're really starting to train the shoulder stability for one. You've got that arm in the extended position in front of your body. That's going to be a position that we hit a lot, right? Chest presses, when we go for lat raises. This is going to be something where the more that we can train our shoulders and proper placement and our hands below our shoulders, the more that we're going to learn proper engagement through that back line. One of the really big things is that I see shoulder blades kind of all over the place. And that's one thing with rotator cuffs. The more that we can just, again, build mind-body connection to those itty-bitty muscles underneath our shoulder blades that are responsible for all sorts of different movements, the better. So to me, this is a big one. Another way to get started is when you are on the floor, don't hold it for 60 seconds straight. That's the other thing. I see so many ego planks. It drives me nuts when someone's like, how long can you hold a plank for? I'm like, what's the point of holding a plank for longer than anything other than ego, especially when a lot of times we're holding planks, our hips drop, our shoulders drop. Suddenly our kinetic chain is way off. So what are we even doing? We're dumping into our shoulder blades and it's just a whole host of issues. I would rather have someone give me an incredibly solid 10-second plank, release their legs for 2 seconds, and then hold it again for 10 seconds. This was actually something I took or learned during a TRX training in a forearm plank. We held a perfect forearm plank for 10 seconds, elbows and toes pulling together energetically, the entire body engaged, and then we released our toes for 2 to 5 seconds, and we redid it. And we did that 3 times. So we built up to 60 seconds, but those 60 seconds were 60 incredibly solid seconds of planking. And obviously, of course, this is a core move. So when we're looking at level 1 for stabilization and endurance of the core, we're looking for those local core stabilizers, just like we were when we were talking about using that glute bridge last week as a warm-up. This is going to be a really good way to turn on that trunk to make sure that as we move into lifts, we're bracing through and supporting our spine. So obviously, planks show up a million different ways as we continue working them in, but initially it just becomes a really good way to start training that mind-body connection and to start actually setting up this incredibly foundational movement, elevated planks. Okay, 3. Nope, I'm on 4. That one took a long time. Okay, 4. I'll try not to take so much more. So or so much time each time. Scap raises or scapula raises. These are kind of tricky to explain. They are a NASM darling. And when I first started, I was like, why? And then as I trained, I was like, oh, this is why. Because again, the average human, myself included, if I'm not paying attention, I'm recording this video right now and I'm not watching it, but there's a chance it's happening as I'm talking because my mic's a little low. The average human has overactive traps and scapula levators, I believe. Yep. Where our shoulders have a tendency to creep up into our ears. That throws off a lot of things. And if our traps are overactive, we start especially early on when things like our rhomboids are weakened, and like I said, those rotator cuff muscles maybe don't have that neuromuscular control yet. Even our chest, which when we're in a rounded position tends to be really tight, can be underactive or less active than the traps. So the traps can really start to get in the way of other important movements. So when we are doing scap raises, the arms, I like to start body weight because again, we're training these muscle groups. We're starting to develop mind-body connection. Close the eyes. I put my hand on the client's back a lot of times so they can feel their shoulder blades moving against my hand. The arms aren't coming out directly to the side. They're not coming out directly to the front. They're coming at about 45-degree angle. And as the arms start to sweep up, they're compressing down the back, squeezing together slightly, and then sliding down the back. So you're working both a retracting of the shoulder blades and a decompression of the shoulder blades. And again, when we can train this is going to be incredibly important for adding weight, because if we haven't built that mind-body connection between our shoulder blades, our sits muscles in that rotator cuff, our rhomboids, whenever we do anything from an overhead press to a front rack barbell squat to a goblet squat, really, or to a row even, we're going to see so much elevation, shoulders up to ears. This just helps to train down so that when we are working those exercises, we're targeting the muscle groups we want to be targeting and not overcompensating with the muscle that is not the prime mover. So this one is just a really good one to start initially building that mind-body connection. It's also really tricky. I like to tack this one on with a balance sometimes. Generally not in the first phase because it is most of us do not have an initial mind-body connection with our backs right at the top. It's very infrequent. That's usually one, like I said, a lot of cues that I'll use with clients is actually placing my hands on their shoulder blades so they have something tangible to feel them move against. We just don't really operate in that line. And like I said, most of our life, even though we should be, right? Those are our posture muscles. Like that's why it's so critical for us to turn them on and to develop that connection, because that's going to be what really keeps our skeleton healthy as we age. It's going to be incredibly important when we think about things like osteoporosis, osteopenia, when we start to think of those like kyphotic spines up at the top with the curve. So it's one of the most important things we can do for our bodies, but we just don't naturally do this in this day-to-day life because when we sit, we round forward. My client recently called it the cashew look, which is way nicer than what Margaret calls it, which is the boiled shrimp look. So from now on, thank you. I am stealing the cashew look. We look like a cashew, right? We've got the rounded shoulders. So this is training out of that. Incredibly important. Like I said, I throw it in with a balance in other phases. So right now I have it superset. I was doing a single arm heavy cable row, and then I would superset with a single leg scap raise. So again, they can work back in just because they're a really great way to retrain. That's one thing that when we think about being in the gym, starting out especially, we're really only in the gym 2 to 3 hours a week. Doesn't that sound accessible? It is 2 to 3 hours a week, but the point is we're out at the gym all the other hours. So again, whatever position our muscles are held in the most frequently, that is going to be the position they remain in. So the more present we can be in our body of rolling those shoulders back, dropping them from the ears, and the more in the gym that we can start to train even knowing how to do that and how to feel when maybe we've gotten that ear creep coming. And that's why I love this one. It's super duper important for what's to come down the road. Okay, now we're at 3, and this is going to be a 4-2-1 chest press. What? We're adding a little tempo. So I love a chest press as our beginning. A lot of people just where, okay, pull back. A lot of programs have push-ups in them. And I think push-ups are a great exercise. There's no arguing it. I also think that push-ups, and I've said this a million times, are done incorrectly most of the time. So eventually, I would love everyone I work with to get to the point of doing strong, solid, correct push-ups. But we do not start there. Maybe we could start with a wall push-up. But even still, I like to start with a chest press. Couple of different reasons. One, we can add weight to it pretty quickly. So we can start to get strong in that front line pretty darn easily. Or quickly. Simple, not easy, right? The 4-2-1, that tempo is training endurance of the pecs so that we're starting to build up the pecs ability to work over time with more and more load. So 4-2-1 means that as I'm lowering, and so as my elbow is coming down towards the floor, I also like to do these from the floor starting out, because if we're on a bench doing a chest press, there's a point where if we're not trained with that neuromuscular control, if we don't have a good control of our body yet, as the elbow passes the shoulder joint on a bench, there's a tendency for the shoulder head to roll forward, and then you're in just like kind of that nowhere zone. You're putting a lot of pressure on the shoulder. You're getting into that trap again. So if you're on the floor, it has this really nice bracing point. I actually have a client who's in their mid-60s who is dealing with a rotator cuff issue right now. We were able to move them to the floor and add chest presses back in really safely. So that's a great hack as well. So from the floor, when we're lowering down, we count 4 seconds. That's going to be our eccentric phase. So that's going to be as the pec is lengthening. I'm going to hold at the bottom of the chest press where my muscle is lengthened for 2. So I'm working that isometric hold, and then I'm going to push back up for 1. And as I push back up, my chest muscle is shortening. So down for 4, hold for 2, up for 1, and that is our endurance tempo. That tempo, fun fact, can really be added to any workout early on in that phase, well, ever. But in phase 1, especially when we're working on that muscular endurance, that's a real doozy of a tempo to work your muscle endurance. I also like it because when we slow down, not only are you getting that bang for your buck with muscular endurance, you're also forcing yourself to go slower. That's another thing that I see as a mistake. Mistake sounds so rude, but just something, a misconception when people are getting started is that they move through their reps fairly quickly, especially movements that suck, like lunges, for example. And what happens is when they move really quickly, they're moving quickly incorrectly, and they're not moving slowly enough to correct things, especially when they're new. So their lunge, they hit it, they kind of wobble, their foot's kind of all over the place, and they come up and they wobble more, versus stepping back, nailing the position of your feet, slowly lowering, making sure you're stabilizing, holding at the bottom, making sure you're not in the knees, you're feeling it where you're supposed to feel, and then driving through the glutes to stand up. When we slow things down, again, I use it all the time. Imagine that we're talking about training how to play a violin. The first time that we play hot cross buns, and you know we all play hot cross buns when we get started, it's not right? It's dee doo doo. You go slow, you hit each note perfectly. Same with movements. So when we are building up not only muscular endurance, but neuromuscular control, it really helps to set that rewiring in place to learn how to fire these muscles. So that's a big tempo you see a lot early on in Fit After 40. I also like this versus a push-up, I mean, for many reasons, but similar to a glute bridge versus a deadlift, you're in a very safe position against gravity. All you're doing really is, it's not just 100% isolating through the chest because there is stabilization that's happening through the trunk. But for the most part, especially when you're on the floor, there's not a ton of places in the kinetic chain that can go wonky versus like a push-up where your hips could drop or you could slide forward and your hands could be pressing up by your face. So there's just a lot of other checkpoints there. This one is a much more achievable movement pattern so that we can start to build that mind-body connection that we eventually take into a push-up, into heavier presses, as well as start to build strength in this position. It's also a very fun position later on when we look at like month 3 of Fit After 40 to get stronger at. Okay, next up, this is where I started like having a lot of fun with it. Number 2, I put as a half kneel single arm cable row. I mentioned that I did this in my workout today, there's a lot of reasons that I love this one. Obviously, if being on your knee is an issue, pop something underneath it, a pad, a couple sweatshirts or a towel so it feels comfy. And if it doesn't feel great, obviously you do not have to kneel down. There's other things that we can do. However, starting just with the half kneel component, one of the things that I love a half kneel is that it starts to train deep into that low core. So you're really using a lot of core. You have to learn how to brace because otherwise your hips are all over. So right away, your body starts to build those neurological cues to brace through the core. I love a cable because it's pretty darn safe. There's no hinging yet, right? So I'm able to start really working on strength here. And it's pretty darn adjustable. If it doesn't feel good, I can just let it go and it snaps. Please don't do that a lot. That's like a Hail Mary type thing if everything feels wrong. But in theory, it won't because we're in a safer position. It just trains two of the most important things getting started, which are strong core and neuromuscular control of that back line. Because again, helping you really determine or start to fire through your back line. I also love a single side movement coming in because we have a tendency to be imbalanced from side to side. So when we train one side at a time, we can start to see which side maybe has a tendency to be stronger. We can see which side maybe has a little bit of movement compensation. So maybe there's that elevation of the trap. Maybe there's a little roll forward of the shoulder head as we go into the completion of our row. It's also a good anti-rotation workout, which just bonus. I mean, that's that core again. So I'm a real big fan of this. That's one thing I'm really excited about, opening our space for Fit After 40 in 2026 because cables have been something that in the last 3 years I've really come to appreciate at almost every single phase of training, especially when it comes to building muscle. Because when we think about hypertrophy, which we're not talking about today, but when we do think about it, you want to target a muscle group quite specifically. So I can go pretty darn heavy on a seated back row that I might not necessarily feel comfortable going with a bent over barbell row. Maybe I would, but I just feel like I'm in a more secure position. So it makes me a little braver and safer. Okay, so my number one is a TRX wide row. And this goes back to the conversation we were having a little bit earlier about building that mind-body connection to the back line. When we are talking about training the muscles that can start to drop the traps down, finding that wide pull where we're pinching just at the top of the rhomboids. When our elbows are along our side, we're utilizing a lot more of that back area. When our elbows start to scoop up into the side, you can feel it even if you just squeeze your elbows back and then start to sweep them up. You can feel how it gets more concentrated up between the tops of the shoulder blades. And that, if we can really start to strengthen those muscles in terms of posture, hot diggity dog. And if we can build that mind-body connection, it's a really good opportunity, like I said, or you'll be able to more effectively in the future when we're coming up on heavier lifts, coming up on things like pull-ups, coming up on things like heavy goblet squats, to really make sure that our back line is engaged here. So, or even deadlifts, right? So that to me though is getting started with that tendency in this modern day world for those shoulders to roll forward. This is one of the number one moves in my book to retrain that skeletal imbalance. And that's something that just carries into everything, especially as we're aging. I also love TRX, period. If you could only have one piece of equipment at home, I think I'd request a TRX. And that's like, I mean, obviously, if you could have like a whole dumbbell rack, that's a whole other thing. But TRX, especially getting started, is a very clutch and safe way to move because you can do everything from rows to chest presses to supported squats to learning how to hinge to flexibility and mobility to work with your feet in the straps. It's just a super versatile tool that makes it really achievable to train at a lot of different levels because we can position ourselves to the anchor where it can get pretty stinking heavy. And like I said, especially early on when we're looking at lower body, for example, I love throwing in TRX straps to train something like lunges. I think you need to I think it's more effective working with a trainer when using a TRX strap, because there is a natural tendency, and why wouldn't there be, to grip for dear life. And then your movement pattern is actually incorrect because you're using your arms more than you're using your legs. So everything's kind of off. But in terms of having something that makes a person feel safe working on single leg movements, I think it's a great tool. I love it. I love a TRX. We actually have mine in our car ready to go on the road. That's the other thing. You can pack it. It's not big and you can take it anywhere. I love traveling with my TRX. It makes working out accessible wherever we are. So that's going to be pretty fun. Okay. Wow. There we have it, my friends. My personal top 5 favorite exercises for upper body for beginners or folks back to fitness after a while. We've got our elevated plank. We've got our scap raises or scapula raises. We've got our 4-2-1 chest press. You've got your half kneel single arm cable row, and you have your TRX wide row. Again, here we're looking at really building foundations, right? So we are seeing a lot of training neuromuscular control. We're seeing an element of single side and balancing when we're going through that single arm row. We're seeing a lot of building of the stabilizers with things like the plank, the retraining of the back line with the scapula. Notice that 3 of these, right, are for back line, the scap raises, kneeling cable row, and the TRX wide row. That's for a reason. Again, that's our most underutilized position in this day and age. A lot of it is for posture. It's really, these foundational movements are, and a ton of core too, are the thing that as we start to move in, because again, once we move into things like bent over rows, if we know how to contract our back muscles effectively and safely, then we're going to be moving a lot better when we add that hinge pattern to it, and a lot safer. Because one of the biggest issues people say they have with rows is feeling their lower back, and that is not where we want to feel it. I feel like I've said this before on this podcast, but just in case I haven't for some reason, if you feel things in your knee joints, in your elbow joints, in your low back, stop, right? That's not permission to keep pushing and just like get through it. That is your body moving incorrectly and trying to tell you that something needs to shift. So whether it's grabbing a trainer who's on the floor, joining Fit After 40, we got in person here in the Twin Cities and online if you're out of the Twin Cities. Point is, just get someone to help move you through that, because if you keep reinforcing somewhere that there is pain, discomfort, then remember, you are training your muscles to fire in that incorrect pattern over and over and over. Those things should not be a part of exercise. Next week, we are talking all about the top 5 fitness myths for women. That one, man, I had a long list. Picking 5 was almost impossible. But one of the things we talk about, spoilers, is training being dangerous. And it's just not. Training should be the opposite. When we train, we are looking to support our skeletons and to put muscle on our frame and to build longevity and vitality into our aging, right? It is to support us, not to break us down. So if it feels like it's doing the opposite, it probably is. And it's probably because we just haven't learned how to do it the right way yet. So again, programs, well, the reason I created Fit After 40, I was going to say programs, but one of the 2 reasons I created Fit After 40 small group personal training is because I have yet to see on the interweb any programs that truly, besides working with a personal trainer, teach people who are new or newly back, or honestly, anyone who wants to learn how to move correctly that hasn't, that actually teach them how to move. So again, this program is a 3-month minimum for that reason. You can stay afterwards, which I hope you do, or once you graduate, you are guaranteed to know how to move well and what to do to continue building muscle. So you will actually learn in month 1. We will balance out your muscle imbalances. We will turn on those neural pathways that get turned off in modern day society. Second month, we are working on building that muscular endurance. So now we're really training your muscles to work under load while still maintaining proper moving mechanics. And then that third month, we go into muscle build. So again, you get a toolkit. I teach it to you. You walk away with it. You have access to it for your whole life. If that is something that you are interested in, because why wouldn't we be? Why not make life a little easier? Hop on that commitment-free waitlist in the show notes. Like I said, even if it's just like a 5% wondering, it's a great way to get some access to free resources in the meantime. So, all right, team, I've got the next couple rounds of podcasts pre-recorded because we'll be on the road to weddings. I, of course, will be accessible by email, Kinsey at fitafter40.info. Whoa. Kinsey at fitafter40.info. That's 40, the number 40, not spelled out. Or on Instagram at kinsey.does.the.fitness. Full disclosure, I'm not as great as checking that right now, so email might be a little bit faster. You guys, thank you so much for sticking around today. I hope you have a beautiful week. I hope it's fall wherever you are, because my goodness, it is delightful. Okay, she's done. Thank you so much for being here. As always, if you got something out of today's podcast, like, share a review, share it on your social media. If you have someone who you feel like could benefit from this, share with them. This podcast, as always, is a grassroots operation. Just me literally standing in my kitchen with you right now, trying to get the word out about how to help women take care of their amazing bodies in a world that is full of so much. So let's keep the revolution going. And in the meantime, take care of you and your amazing body because you're so stinking worth it. Aroo!